Hello, my name's Dr. Eleanor Jones, and today I'll give a talk about the biology of the Asian hornet nests that have been found in the UK. I'll start with a brief summary of what has been found between 2016 and 2019 before going in a bit more detail about the nests that were found last year in 2020. So just to briefly summarise, the Asian hornet's an invasive species that arrived in France sometime around 2004, and it's managed to spread very rapidly from there to the extent that it's now beginning to arrive in the UK. So the first nest that was found in the mainland UK was found in 2016 in Tetbury. Shown here is a map from a recent publication we've made that's available freely online, for free online. So if anybody is interested in greater detail of what has been going on until 2019, if you just Google the name of the publication, you should be able to access it very easily. So the map there shows the distribution of the nests that have been found between 2016 and 2019. So the first nest was in Tetbury, and then in 2017 there was a nest found in Woolacombe. Then in 2018 it was quite a busy year with nests found in Foy, in New Alresford and in Brockenhurst. 2019 was slightly less busy with nests found at Drayton Bassett and Christchurch. Also shown on the map are locations of some individual hornets that were found and we also analysed. So alongside the nest findings that are found each year, we will also get a small number of individuals. So I thought it might be nice to start with some pictures of the Asian hornet nests that we've found to date. So the structure of the nest is, each nest is a round ball shape, and it's frequently found within hedges or trees, so it's anchored into branches. And within the nest there's a number of combs. These combs hold the young Asian hornet eggs. If you look up at the top right, there's a photo down into the cells of, in each comb, and you can just see little pimples, and these are the eggs, which will subsequently grow larger and larger until they become quite large, substantial larvae. They then begin to pupate, and once they've pupated, they've then turned into fully adult hornets, which will then emerge. So just to go over the nests that have been found up until 2019, this is a photo of all of the nests that were found. So there's 9 in total, and they were all found sometime between early September and mid-October. So it's quite a small window that these nests are found in, which is perfect timing if anybody wants to start watching for Asian hornets from now on. They vary in size from quite small things with a diameter of about 13 centimetres to what would be considered, I guess, a medium-sized nest of sort of 28 centimetres. Although you can see from the photos that some of the nests are quite damaged when they're taken out of the place where they're found, and so you can't necessarily accurately record the diameter. The number of combs that are present also gives a relatively good idea of the size of the nest, and the number of combs vary between 3 and 7. In most of the nests that have been recovered, we've found all of the life stages. So we found individuals at the egg stage all the way through to the adult stage. But for a small number of nests, we've not been able to find any eggs, or even sometimes not any larvae, which indicates that the nest has stopped breeding. In some cases, well, in 2 cases, we've found pairs of nests which were formed by the same queen. And what these are, we assume, are primary nests where the queen has started a small nest and a founding brood. Once that's reached a certain size, the queen and the individuals from those nests have then formed a larger secondary nest, and this secondary nest is likely to be the one that would then subsequently produce next year's queens and drones. I've just highlighted in squares and boxes these pairs. So the one in D is the primary nest that was found at Foy, and then C is the secondary nest. And you can see the secondary nest is damaged. It was larger and it was contained within some sort of vegetation. And then H and I in the brown box, these are the primary and the secondary nests found from Christchurch. On top of the morphological analysis we've done on the nests, we also have been using genetic tools to find out more about these nests and about how the individuals are related to each other and where they've come from. One of the principal uses we've been making of this has been to try and identify whether lone individuals that have been found around the nests do come from that nest, or whether they might have come from another nest. And this would help inform how much effort to put into surveillance after the nest has been found and destroyed. Another key finding from the genetics is we can identify how many fathers contributed to that nest, so how many males the queen had mated with and then laid eggs that had genetics from different fathers. There was an early French study which indicated that they thought that the nests had a very large number of males contributing to the nest population. So they were finding figures of around 9, 11 fathers contributing into the nest. And they hypothesized that this was to do with to do with the levels of inbreeding, and maybe in an attempt to increase the genetic diversity in the nests. However, for all of the nests that we've looked at, we found no evidence for more than 1 or 2 fathers, possibly 3 in one circumstance, that contribute to the nest. Another thing we can use the genetics for is to see whether any of the nests are direct descendants of nests found in previous years. So whether, despite the nest having been destroyed, it had somehow managed to produce next year's queens or drones. And there's no evidence at all that a nest found and destroyed in one year is producing a nest that's has been found in a subsequent year. Another sort of broad brush conclusion is that, as you would expect, it looks very much like the hornets are arriving from European populations, and we see no evidence that genetically that any of these nests have derived from more recent incursions from Asia, for example. So, having a look at Gosport, so in 2020 there was only a single nest found, which was quite nice. Bit of a slow year on the Asian hornet front. It was found sometime around the 11th of September, and it was a relatively small nest. It's slightly damaged there, but the diameter was approximately 21 centimetres, and it had 3 cones within it. Inside the nest, they recovered 28 individuals, of which there were 23 females and five individuals that looked morphologically like males. If they were males, that might sound some alarm bells, because it would indicate that the nest was producing the next year's sexual forms, so the individuals that were going to go on to breed and form the population in 2021. Within the nest, we found all life stages were present, so we found individuals from the egg stage all the way up through to the adult stage. And wider trapping was done around the area, and we were sent 17 hornets from traps that were caught in locations away from this nest. And so to the genetic results. One of the first findings was that the individuals that had been caught in traps away from the nest, so traps had been placed around Gosport where the first Asian hornets had been seen, we did the genetics of those as well, and we found that they had in all likelihood come from the same nest. So genetically, they looked like offspring that came from the nest that had been destroyed. And so we could say that it didn't seem likely that there was another nest in the local area. When the nest had been destroyed, within it there had been 5 adults that had been identified morphologically as looking like males. The way that sex is determined in hornets is slightly complicated. It's what's known as a haploid-diploid system, where if an individual has 2 copies of each chromosome, then it's a female. It's a diploid and it's a female. If it has a single copy of each chromosome, then it's a male, and that's known as a haploid. Due to a quirk that I won't go into, in these inbred populations of Asian hornets, something goes wrong with the system, and some of the diploids will grow up to look like morphologically males, although they're diploids. And this is the case here. Those adult males were diploids, and therefore they weren't true males. The nest had not yet started producing adult males that were going to go out and produce the next generation, at least not at this adult stage. When we looked at the genetics of the individuals that were younger than adults, so it looked at the egg stage, the larval stage, the pupae, and then what's known as teneral adults. These are adults that hadn't actually broken out of their cells. We found that for everything from the larvae up, they were all just diploids. They were all laid as female workers. And it was only at the egg stage that we could begin to detect these haploid male individuals. So these are eggs that the queen had laid with the intention that they would become next year the drones that would go on to produce next year's Asian hornets. Because of the way the nest is, the laying happens, typically in an Asian hornet nest, the queen will lay the drones first and then she'll lay the queens. And so because we only detected these drones at the very early egg stage, then we know that this nest had been destroyed before it had started releasing drones and queens out into the environment. Genetically, the nest fits in with a pattern that we'd seen from the other nests that we found in the UK, that there was just a single father contributing to these individuals that we'd done the genetics on. We also looked at the relationship of this nest to the nest that had been found in previous years, both nearby and also some of the other nests. And there's no evidence at all that this is a direct descendant from any of the previous nests. So when the nests are being destroyed, it doesn't appear that any of the individuals are escaping and forming colonies that we then find in the next years. I've not gone at all in any detail into the methods behind all of this. If you're interested, that publication I mentioned earlier, you can find the details of the genetic methods that we used in that. So it only remains for me to say that, as with all of these things, this work wouldn't have happened without the vigilance of the beekeepers who are looking out for these Asian hornets, the APHA inspectors and the APHA staff who go out and find these and coordinate the finding of these nests. And then at FARA, without the technical staff and the other scientists who help deliver all of this work. And also Kirsty Stainton, who is ex of FARA and has moved on to Pirbright. And of course to acknowledge the funding behind all of this, which is provided by DEFRA. Thank you all very much for listening.